The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber stretched 30 feet high, made from some strange metal that shimmed like liquid mercury. Ambassador Vera stepped through them, her 6 legs clicking against the polished floor. Her people, the Kethvari, looked like walking crystal sculptures, but today her usually bright blue shell had turned a dull gray. She was scared, and it showed. 12 different alien species sat in a perfect circle around her. The hegemony delegates towered 15 feet tall, with skin like tree bark. The Kolari looked like floating jellyfish in mechanical suits. Each species had conquered star systems, built massive fleets, and ruled over billions. And here she stood, alone, begging for their help. "Honored Council," Vera began, her voice translator making her words sound mechanical. "My world is dying." The chamber fell silent, except for the soft humming of life support systems. Through the massive windows, she could see ships from a dozen civilizations docked at the station. Some were sleek in silver. Others looked like living creatures made of metal and light. "Our star, Thessera, has entered its final phase," she continued. "What you call a red giant. In 2 of your standard years, maybe less, our planet will be uninhabitable. The oceans are already boiling away. The ice caps melted 6 months ago. 3 billion of my people have nowhere to go." One of the hegemony representatives leaned forward. His voice boomed to the chamber like thunder. "The Kethvari have had centuries to prepare for this. Your astronomers surely saw this coming." Vera's shell dimmed even more. "We did see it coming. We built ships, but not enough. Our technology isn't advanced enough for mass evacuation. We need help. We need sanctuary." A Kolari delegate floated closer, its tentacles twitching. "The refugee protocols are clear. Each species must demonstrate economic value or strategic importance. What do the Kethvari offer?" "We offer our lives, our culture, our knowledge of crystal growth technology," Vera said. But even she could hear how weak it sounded. The council members looked at each other, communicating through methods humans couldn't even understand. Some used telepathy, others changed colors, and a few made sound like singing whales. "The galaxy has no room for economic refugees," announced a Tertian representative, its 4 eyes blinking in sequence. "Every species faces challenges. The strong adapt, the weak perish. This is natural law." Vera felt something break inside her chest. Natural law? We're talking about 3 billion lives. Children who will never see their 5th birthday. Elders who survived the last ice age on our world. Artists, scientists, teachers. They're not numbers on an economic report. Sentiment is irrelevant, the hegemony delegate rumbled. Resources are finite. Habitat space is limited. Political complications would arise from such a massive relocation. The rejection hit her like a physical blow. Vera had practiced the speech for months, learned the protocols, studied each species' culture to find the right words. None of it mattered. She was watching her entire civilization receive a death sentence delivered with bureaucratic politeness. "Please," she whispered, and hated herself for how small her voice sounded. "There must be something." "The decision is final," the Tertian representative said. "The Kethvari request for refugee status is denied. Security will escort you from the premises." As 2 robotic guards approached, Vera caught a glimpse of movement in the observation deck above. Most of the viewing area was empty, but one figure sat alone in the back row. It was one of the new species, a human. She'd heard they'd only joined galactic civilization 6 months ago, barely worthy of notice. But this human wasn't looking at his datapad or whispering to colleagues like the other observers usually did. He was staring directly at her, and his face showed something she hadn't seen in any council chamber before. His eyes were wide, his mouth slightly open, and he leaned forward in his seat, like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. The human looked angry. As the guards reached her, Vera took one last look around the chamber. 12 of the most powerful species in the galaxy sat comfortably in their chairs, already moving on to the next agenda item. Her people's extinction was just another Tuesday morning for them. The massive doors closed behind her with a soft whisper, sealing her fate and the fate of 3 billion souls back on Thessera Prime. In 18 months, maybe less, her world would be a dead rock orbiting a bloated red star. And apparently, That was just natural law. But something nagged at her as she walked down the corridor. That human's expression kept playing in her mind. She'd seen anger before, but this was different. This wasn't the cold fury of politics or the calculated rage of war. This looked like someone who actually cared. Vera sat alone in the neutral quarters cantina, staring at a glass of something that tasted like liquid metal. The space station's artificial gravity felt wrong under her 6 legs, and the air recyclers made everything smell like cleaning chemicals. Around her, dozens of different species conducted business, made deals, and lived their lives while her world slowly died. She'd been here for 3 hours, trying to figure out what to tell her people back home. How do you explain that the galaxy's most powerful civilizations had sentenced 3 billion souls to death with the casual indifference of filing paperwork? "Excuse me, Ambassador Vera." She looked up to see the human from the observation deck standing beside her table. Up close, he looked even younger than she'd expected, maybe 30 years old in human terms. His brown hair was slightly messy, and his simple black suit marked him as someone without much rank or importance. "I'm Jack Morrison, Earth's diplomatic liaison," he said, extending his hand in the human greeting gesture. "I was wondering if we could talk." Vera studied him carefully. Earth was the newest member of galactic civilization, barely 6 months in the community. Their technology was primitive. Their fleet consisted of maybe 12 ships, and their entire planet had fewer people than lived in her home city. What could they possibly offer? "I'm sorry, but if you're looking for trade agreements or technology exchanges, this isn't the time," she said wearily. Jack shook his head. "Actually, I wanted to talk about your situation. What happened and it was wrong." Something in his voice made her look at him more carefully. Most diplomats spoke in measured tones, calculated phrases designed to reveal nothing. This human sounded genuinely upset. "Wrong," she said. "It's galactic law. The strong survive, the weak perish. Natural selection on a cosmic scale." "That's not natural selection, that's cruelty," Jack said, pulling up a chair. "Look, I know Earth isn't exactly a major power around here. We barely figured out faster than light travel last year. But what I saw in that chamber today wasn't civilization, it was cowardice." Vera felt something stir in her chest, something she hadn't felt since entering the council chambers. Hope, maybe, or at least curiosity. "Your people are dying, and these so-called advanced civilizations are more worried about their quarterly resource reports than 3 billion lives." Jack continued. "Where I come from, we call that shameful. And what exactly do you propose to do about it?" Vera asked. "Your entire species has 12 ships and 1 planet. We need to evacuate 3 billion people across interstellar distances." Jack was quiet for a moment, then pulled out a small communication device. "Would you be willing to speak directly with our leadership? I think they should hear this from you personally." 20 minutes later, Vera found herself in the Human Embassy's communication center, a cramped room filled with primitive but functional equipment. The screen flickered to life, revealing a middle-aged human woman sitting in what looked like a simple office back on Earth. "Ambassador Vera, I'm President Rebecca Walsh," the woman said without preamble. "Jack has briefed me on your situation. How long do your people have?" 18 months, perhaps less," Vera replied, still not sure why she was bothering with this conversation. "How many people are we talking about?" 3 billion. President Walsh was quiet for several seconds. Then she leaned forward, and Vera saw the same expression she'd noticed in Jack's eyes back in the chamber. Anger, but the kind that comes from caring too much rather than too little. "Jack, what's our current carrying capacity for refugees?" "Honestly, Madam President, we're talking about numbers that dwarf our entire population. We'd need to convert every available space, maybe start construction on orbital habitats, completely restructure our resource distribution." "That's not what I asked. Can we do it?" Jack looked at his notes, then back at the screen. "It would be the largest humanitarian effort in human history. We'd exhaust our strategic reserves, convert military vessels, probably need to implement rationing programs. But yes, theoretically, we could do it." President Walsh turned back to Vera. "Ambassador, Earth officially offers sanctuary to all Kethvari refugees. We'll start preparing immediately." Vera stared at the screen in shock. I I don't understand. Why would you do this? You barely know us. You have nothing to gain and everything to lose. Because it's the right thing to do, President Walsh said simply, and because sometimes the right thing to do is also the only thing to do. After the call ended, Vera sat in stunned silence. In less than an hour, these humans had offered what 12 advanced civilizations had refused to consider. I have to ask, she finally said to Jack. What's the catch? What do you want from us? Jack looked genuinely confused. Want from you? We want you to live. We want your children to grow up. We want your culture to survive. Isn't that enough? For the first time in months, Vera's crystalline shell began to brighten, shifting from dull gray toward its natural blue. Maybe there was hope after all. The evacuation started with chaos. Captain Amy Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the U.S. horizon, watching 12 human ships prepare for the most impossible mission in their species' history. Each vessel had been stripped down, retrofitted, and packed beyond safe capacity limits. Military cruisers carried families instead of weapons. Research ships held children instead of laboratories. Control, this is Horizon Actual, Amy spoke into her headset. We're looking at a 14-day journey to Thessera Prime with current hyperspace routes. How many people can we bring back? Jack's voice crackled through the comm from the command station. Each ship should handle about 8,000 refugees. If we remove everything non-essential, that's roughly 96,000 people per run. Amy did the math in her head and felt her stomach drop. 3 billion people divided by 96,000 meant over 30,000 separate trips. With 14 days each way, plus loading time, they were looking at decades. They had 18 months. Jack, these numbers don't work, she said quietly. I know. We'll figure something out. We always do. The first convoy reached Thessera Prime 3 weeks later. Amy had seen dying worlds in documentaries, but nothing prepared her for the reality. The planet's surface glowed orange from reflected light of the bloated star. Oceans had turned to steam, and entire continents were cracking apart from the heat. Vera met them at the last functioning spaceport, a massive underground complex carved into bedrock. Thousands of Ketvari families waited in organized groups, each carrying nothing but small bags of personal belongings. Captain Rodriguez, Vera said, her translator making her sound almost human. I cannot express our gratitude. Save it for when we actually pull this off, Amy replied, watching her crew work alongside Ketvari engineers to load the refugees. How are your people handling this? Better than expected. Word has spread that humans are coming. For the first time in months, people have hope. The loading process took 18 hours. Amy watched human crew members help elderly Ketvari onto transport shuttles, saw her medical officer working with Ketvari doctors to ensure everyone was healthy enough for the journey. Language barriers disappeared when lives were at stake. But as they prepared to depart, long-range sensors detected something that made Amy's blood run cold. Captain, we've got company, her sensor operator called out. Hegemony Battle Group, 3 ships approaching fast. Amy cursed under her breath. The Hegemony had been making noise about human interference in galactic affairs ever since the evacuation started. Now, they were here to do something about it. The Hegemony flagship was 10 times larger than the Horizon, a massive dreadnought that could probably destroy the entire human convoy without breaking a sweat. Its captain appeared on Amy's main screen, a towering alien with bark-like skin and eyes like burning coals. Human vessel, you are in violation of Galactic Refugee Protocol 7, the alien announced. Cease your operations immediately and withdraw from the system. Amy looked around her bridge. Her crew was exhausted, running on coffee and determination. Behind them, 8,000 Ketvari refugees were counting on them to get home safely. The smart thing to do would be to comply, maybe try to negotiate some kind of compromise. Instead, Amy leaned forward in her captain's chair. Hegemony vessel, this is Captain Rodriguez. I've got 8,000 people on my ship who are going to die if I leave them here. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to back off, and we're going to finish our mission. The Hegemony captain's eyes flared brighter. You dare threaten us? Your pathetic ship cannot stand against our weapons. You're right, we probably can't, Amy said calmly. But here's the thing about humans. We don't abandon people. Ever. You want to stop us? You'll have to destroy us. And when you do, every species in the galaxy is going to see footage of the mighty hegemony murdering refugees and their rescuers. The comm channel went silent for several long minutes. Amy could hear her own heartbeat and the quiet hum of life support systems. Finally, the hegemony captain spoke again. This is not over, human. The three massive ships turned and jumped back into hyperspace. Amy's communications officer grinned. Ma'am, we're getting messages from across the galaxy. Someone recorded that whole exchange. And the Quillari Confederation just announced they're sending medical ships to help with the evacuation. The Tertian Collective is offering fuel supplies. Even some of the neutral species are talking about contributing resources. Amy stared at the main screen in amazement. Somehow, their stubborn refusal to back down had accomplished what centuries of galactic diplomacy couldn't. They'd shamed other species into doing the right thing. But the clock was still ticking. Even with help from other civilizations, they had millions of people to evacuate and less than 15 months to do it. The real work was just beginning. All right, people. Amy announced to her crew, let's get these folks home and come back for more. We got a lot of lives to save. 14 months into the evacuation, everything was falling apart. Captain Amy Rodriguez floated in zero gravity inside the Horizon's engine room, welding a cracked coolant line with shaking hands. Her ship had made 23 round trips to Thessera Prime, far beyond what any vessel was designed to handle. Metal fatigue showed in every bulkhead, and half the systems ran on backup power. Captain, we got another problem. Her engineer called over the comm. The hyperspace drive is throwing error codes again. We're looking at maybe 3 more jumps before complete failure. Amy closed her eyes and did the math she'd been avoiding. They'd evacuated 1.2 million Cathvari so far. The expanded fleet of human ships, working beyond all safety limits, had managed to save roughly 40% of the population. But Thessera Prime Star was entering its final collapse phase. They had maybe 6 weeks left. How many people are still planetside? She asked. Last count was 1.8 million, ma'am. Amy felt something break inside her chest. After everything they'd sacrificed, after pushing themselves and their ships beyond all reasonable limits, they were going to lose nearly 2 billion people. The math was simple and horrible. Back on the command station, Jack stared at the holographic display showing ship positions throughout the galaxy. Red dots represented human vessels, many of them showing critical system failures. Yellow dots marked a handful of alien ships that had joined their effort. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. Sir, incoming priority transmission, his communications officer announced. The main screen flickered to life, showing a Quillari commander floating in what looked like a medical bay. Behind her, Amy could see dozens of her jellyfish-like people working frantically. Human coordination, this is Medical Fleet Commander Zara. We're redirecting our entire hospital ship division to Thessera Prime. 47 vessels, each capable of carrying 15,000 refugees in emergency conditions. Jack stared at the screen. Commander, that's over 700,000 people. But why? The aliens' tentacles moved in what Jack had learned was their equivalent of a shrug. Because someone needs to do the right thing. And apparently, you humans showed us what that looks like. Before Jack could respond, another signal came in. This time it was a Tertian Collective representative, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence. Human Jack Morrison, the Collective Council has voted. We're contributing our entire civilian transport fleet. 63 ships, plus fuel supplies for extended operations. I don't understand, Jack said. Your government rejected our initial request for help. That was before we saw what you were willing to sacrifice, the Tertian replied. Your species has spent yourselves into near bankruptcy for people you barely know. It shames us. We will not let that shame continue. Over the next 6 hours, the communications board lit up like a holiday display. The Valdar Union offered their fastest courier ships. The Centauri Mining Consortium contributed their massive cargo haulers. Even species that had never spoken to humans before began sending messages of support. Jack, you need to see this. His aide called out, pointing to the tactical display. "We're showing over 300 vessels converging on Thessera Prime, from 17 different species." Jack watched in amazement as the largest rescue fleet in galactic history assembled around a dying world. Ships that had never worked together, species that barely tolerated each other, all united by something that had started with 12 human vessels and a stubborn refusal to let people die. But the real miracle happened when the hegemony showed up. Amy was coordinating the loading of refugees when a massive dreadnought dropped out of hyperspace. Her first instinct was to prepare for another confrontation, but something was different this time. The ship's weapons were powered down, and it was transmitting on humanitarian frequencies. Human vessels. This is Hegemony Battle Group Gamma, came the familiar voice of the captain who'd threatened them months ago. "We're here to assist with evacuation operations." Amy couldn't help but smile. "Hegemony vessel, this is Captain Rodriguez. What changed your mind?" There was a long pause before the alien responded. "My daughter asked me a question last night. She asked why we were letting people die when we had the power to save them. I could not give her a good answer." The final weeks became a logistical masterpiece that would be studied in military academies for centuries. Over 300 ships from 18 different species worked in perfect coordination. The Quillari handled medical emergencies. The Turksians provided fuel and supplies, and the humans coordinated everything from their small command station. Amy found herself working alongside the same hegemony captain who'd once threatened to destroy her ship. Together, they established refugee processing centers on 7 different worlds, managed supply lines across half the galaxy, and somehow made the impossible math work. Human Rodriguez, the hegemony captain, said during one of their coordination meetings, "I owe you an apology." "No, you don't," Amy replied. "You're here now. That's what matters." With 72 hours left before Thessera Prime became uninhabitable, the last transport lifted off from the dying world. Vera was aboard, along with a final group of Kethvari survivors. Every single person had been saved. As the massive rescue fleet jumped to hyperspace, Amy realized they'd done more than save 3 billion lives. They'd changed what it meant to be part of galactic civilization. 8 months after the last ship escaped Thessera Prime, Vera stood in what used to be the Nevada desert, watching something that would have seemed impossible a year ago. Massive crystal formations rose from the sand like glittering cities, but these weren't built by human hands. The Kethvari had discovered that their natural ability to grow and shape crystal could do more than create beautiful art. The soil contamination levels have dropped 60% in this sector alone, Dr. Patricia Chin said, checking her tablet as they walked between the towering structures. "Your people's crystal networks are actually pulling heavy metals and toxins right out of the ground." Vera's shell had returned to its natural bright blue, with new patterns that hadn't been there before. Human scientists said it was a sign of contentment, maybe even joy. "We had no idea our biology could help heal damaged worlds," Vera replied. "On Thessera Prime, we only use crystal growth for construction and decoration. But Earth's soil is so different, so much more complex. It responds to our touch in ways we never imagined." They walked past a group of human children playing with young Kethvari, their laughter mixing with the musical chiming sounds of crystal beings made when happy. The kids had invented games that worked for both species, and watching them play, it was hard to remember that first contact had only happened 14 months ago. "Ambassador Vera," incoming priority message in the Galactic Council. Patricia's assistant called out. Vera and Patricia made their way to the communication center, a building that perfectly blended human technology with Kethvari crystal engineering. The walls pulsed with soft light, and the air felt cleaner somehow. The main screen showed the same council chamber, where Vera had been rejected less than 2 years ago. But everything was different now. Instead of 12 species sitting in judgment, representatives from 26 civilizations filled the expanded chamber. And at the center table, where only council members used to sit, Jack Morrison occupied the chair marked Earth Kethvari Alliance. The motion before the council today is the formal ratification of the Thessera Accords. Jack announced to the Assembly universal refugee protection protocols that guarantee sanctuary for any species facing extinction-level events. The hegemony representative who had once threatened to destroy human ships stood and addressed the chamber. The hegemony votes in favor. Recent events have shown us that true strength comes from protecting the vulnerable, not abandoning them. One by one, every species in the chamber voted to approve the accords. Even the most isolationist civilizations agreed to contribute resources and ships to future rescue operations. The galaxy had learned something from watching humans exhaust themselves to save strangers. But the real surprise came when the Tertian representative announced the next item on the agenda. The Council recognizes a petition for expanded membership, he said. The Earth-Kethvari Alliance requests permanent seats on the Galactic Council, with full voting rights and veto power over humanitarian issues. This was unprecedented. No species had ever gone from first contact to council membership in less than 2 years. The traditional process took decades, sometimes centuries. The Quillari commander, who had contributed medical ships during the evacuation, floated forward. The Quillari Confederation supports this petition. The Alliance has demonstrated leadership that our established civilizations lacked. They showed us what we should have been all along. The vote was unanimous. After the session ended, Vera found herself standing in the rebuilt United Nations building in New York, looking out at a city that had been transformed. Kethvari crystal spires grew alongside human skyscrapers, their surfaces converting atmospheric pollutants into harmless compounds. Hybrid transportation systems move both species efficiently through the urban landscape. "I still can't believe it sometimes," she said to Jack, who was reviewing reports on his tablet. 2 years ago, my people were facing extinction. Now we're partners in the most powerful alliance in galactic history. Jack looked up from his work. You know what the best part is? It's not about power or politics. Your people are helping us restore our planet's environment. Our engineering is helping you build new colonies on 7 different worlds. Both our species are better than we were alone. A soft chime announced an incoming message. The holographic display showed Captain Amy Rodriguez, now commanding the Alliance's flagship, a massive vessel built with both human and Kethvari technology. "Jack, Vera, we got another situation," Amy said without preamble. Long-range sensors have detected a species called the Morvani. Their homeworld is being consumed by a black hole. Population estimate is around 5 billion. Jack and Vera exchanged looks. The same look they'd shared when they first decided to do the impossible. "How long do they have?" Vera asked. "Maybe 18 months. Jack was already pulling up fleet deployment schedules. "Amy, start gathering the coalition fleet. All species, all available ships." "Already on it," Amy replied with a grin. "The hegemony is contributing their newest dreadnoughts. The Quillari are loading medical supplies. Even species we never worked with before are volunteering ships and crews." As Amy's image faded, Vera realized they created something bigger than either species could have imagined. The galaxy had learned that sometimes the newest voice carries the most important message. "Ready for another impossible mission?" Jack asked. Vera's shell brightened to an almost white glow. "With humans? Always.